Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September meeting of the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority Commission. I am Andrew Taherzadeh, Assistant Director of Marketing Communications at the EDA. I am your moderator for this meeting, which means I will have control over the audio and visual functions of this Zoom call, and I will control the PowerPoint slides that will be used during the meeting. At this time, I would like to ask all those on this call to mute their microphones. Now, I would like to welcome members of the commission to the meeting. Chair Kathy Lang, Vice Chair James Quigley, Secretary Ron Johnson, Treasurer Stephen Partridge, and members Lenny Hainsworth, Rocky Mitchell, Joe Vitalich, and Rick Wagner. FCEDA President and CEO Victor Hoskins and Executive Vice President Alex Imes are on the call, as are EDA Counsel Mike Graff, a number of EDA staff members, consultants who represent the EDA in offices overseas and California, and our marketing communications consultants. I would also like to welcome Fairfax County officials who have joined us for the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. Presenting from the FCEDA tonight will be Chair Lang, President Hoskins, Executive Vice President Alex Imes, Director of Market Intelligence, Stephen Tarditi, Director of Talent Initiatives, Michael Batt, and Vice President of Marketing Communications, Alan Fald. Also presenting will be Kevin Hudak from Brightline Strategies. Members of the FCEDA Commission who have questions will have the opportunity to ask questions as they normally would during meetings. If anyone from the public has any questions, please select the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen to ask a question, or email Cheryl Martelli of the FCEDA. Cheryl's email address can be found in the chat box. We will not answer questions from the public during the meeting, but we will respond to all questions in writing afterward. With that, I will ask Chair Lang to begin the agenda. Chair Lang.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September meeting. First, I would like to welcome Joe Vitalich to his first official meeting as a sworn-in commissioner. Welcome, Joe. We're delighted to have you, and you'll be completing your full orientation soon, so we're happy to have you fully on board. We have a very informative meeting plan for tonight. In addition to regular agenda items, we'll hear a presentation on an office market penetration perception survey conducted by the EDA. Following the open session, we'll have a short break. When we resume, the Commissioner and EDA Counsel Mike Graff will come back for a closed session to discuss a personnel matter. When the closed session is over, we will reconvene to open session, certify that we met in closed session for only the specific reasons that we cited beforehand, and then adjourn for the evening. I also see that David Tao from Reston Now has joined us, so welcome. And we may have other visitors as the night proceeds. We're always delighted to have people who are interested in the EDA join us for our meetings. So welcome, David. So the first thing on our agenda tonight is approval of the minutes of the last meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 2021 meeting?
So Rocky.
Okay, Rocky. Okay, do I hear a second? Is there a second motion? That was James Quigley. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Great. Council Graff, I'm going to ask you to call the roll, please.
Okay, very good. Start with you, Chair Lang.
Yes.
Dr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Partridge.
Yes.
Ms. Hainsworth.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Quigley.
Aye.
And I think, Joe, would you prefer to abstain since you weren't at the last meeting?
That works for me. I
Okay,
abstain.
terrific. Then the minutes are approved.
Very good. I would now ask our treasurer, Commissioner Partridge to present the financial report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your package, you did receive a very detailed and very tiny proposal, the budget here. You can see we're tracking 2 months into the budget year. If you get your glasses out, you can kind of see where those numbers are. We're basically 17% into the year, and we're about 15% of the budget has been expended. So we're trending a little lower than anticipated, partly due to we have 2 vacant positions on the personnel budget. We have a vacant real estate GIS analyst position and a business investment manager in Asia that'll get filled in the next month or so, hopefully, and those numbers should come back up. But overall, the budget's starting off strong. I think we're in a good position, and at this point, everything looks on track for the year. Any
Good.
questions so far?
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now let me turn the agenda over to Executive Vice President Alex Imes for the operations report. He is going to be reporting on the FY21 financial audit.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Lang, and good evening, everyone. Packet, you received a copy of the draft financial audit report for FY21. And so this evening is an information item regarding that report. And what you're going to see in there is a report indicating a clean audit for FY21. And the auditors are working on the final report. They are employees of Cherry Beckert who work with the county's management and finance office on the completion of the report. And that item will be brought to you in October for a vote to accept the FY21 financial statements that are included in this packet. The final report then goes to the county and is rolled up in the county's comprehensive annual financial report, or CAFR. And the CAFR has to be submitted to the Commonwealth of Virginia by November. So that explains the timeline that we're working under for these contents, as well as the contents of the final report. In the financial statements, you'll notice several items that are outside of the EDA general fund budget and do not impact our operating budget. The most significant of those are funds for the RISE grant program that passed through the EDA this year. Then you have grants from the Commonwealth Opportunity Fund, which is also a pass-through the EDA, and pension and other post-employment benefits, which is a county obligation. The documents also include detailed information about conduit debt, so IRBs and county bonds, and their outstanding balances are in the report. And I want to thank Mike Graff for providing this information. And that concludes my report on this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? We'll look forward to seeing the documents. Yeah, thank you.
Great.
So last fall, we began a series of guest speakers to provide the commission and staff with various perspectives about a post-COVID-19 economic recovery and help us provide strategic vision for the future. We're pausing on our guest speakers for September and October. This month, we're going to hear a presentation on how COVID-19 pandemic has affected the commercial real estate market. Of course, commercial real estate is hugely important to us. The mission of the EDA is to build the commercial tax base that the Board of Supervisors uses to fund high-quality public services. For decades, the EDA has had a major impact on the commercial real estate market because we attract businesses to the county and then provide services and resources to keep them here. The pandemic has had a huge impact on the market too, however, as many businesses have had employees stay away from the offices for the last 18 months or have developed a hybrid environment to have people work some days at the office and some days at home. Many employers had anticipated returning to the office by Labor Day, but the Delta variant has pushed back return dates at many companies, particularly our largest employers. The pandemic has not stopped our business investment teams from working with employers who are creating jobs, but we know that their use of office space has changed. In 2020, the EDA commissioned Brightline Strategies, a real estate research firm, to survey local employers, about how they were feeling about their company's revenue situation, how they were using office space, and their perceptions of how their use of office space would change in the future. Brightline researchers presented that report at the commission meeting last September. The staff got Brightline to go back and update the research. I turn it over to Stephen Tarditi, Director of Market Intelligence, to tell us more about the research and introduce tonight's presenter.
Thank you very much, Chair Lang. Yes, the FCEDA re-engaged Brightline strategies to assess how COVID-19 will change demand for commercial office space in the next couple of years. Results will help us to understand, one, the office decision maker sentiment, and two, how we should engage office tenants in this environment going forward, especially for our business and investment staff. Brightline has conducted its analysis using a customized flash poll among Fairfax County office tenants. As we did last year, we are pleased to welcome Kevin Hudak and Jamie Moore from Brightline Strategies to the meeting this evening to present their findings. I'll now turn it over to Kevin.
Hi all, and thank you so much for the introduction, Stephen. Thank you, commissioners, for being here as well, Chair Lang and Director Hoskins. Stephen already introduced part of this initiative, but I wanted to explain where some of this data is coming from. So obviously what you'll see throughout this presentation are data points from 3 different studies. So we first, in April to May of 2020, we had conducted a Mid-Atlantic COVID-19 impact survey, of which we then sliced out Fairfax County to show some of those responses. We then later went on, and in August to September of 2020, that was last year's presentation that we gave, conducted that very same flash poll. And then again, most recently in April through June of 2021, we had about 101 respondents in this phase of the survey, the most recent phase, which basically is it's constituted by a range of commercial office space decision makers, so C-suite members, owners of companies, high level of executives with a direct impact on the space decision, as well as high level influencers, folks who are mid-level managers, office managers, facilities managers who have a role in the decision-making process as well. And what this really paints for us is a good picture of office sentiment today. And in particular for this presentation that we're giving today, a look into where some of these employers believe their revenues may be going, how that impacts their space decision making, and also the trajectory of the pandemic. So Andrew, if we could move on to the next slide, we'll get right into our data points. So what you see here on this slide is a question that we asked in our national studies that were conducted on behalf of the Building Owners and Managers Association. This is one that we trendline through. We bring into the Fairfax County survey to really understand how we compare to others, and then also trendline for those 3 different iterations or phases of this survey. What you see at the bottom are the April to June 2021 numbers. The way this question was asked was, which of these 2 do you most agree with when it comes to COVID-19 and its impact on office spaces? Do you agree or believe that coronavirus is a tremendous inflection point in workplaces, with teleworking being the new normal, and the way our company does business in its workplace will not be the same for some time to come? That's sort of option A right there, that transformation idea. Or do you believe that COVID-19 is a temporary blip? Whether it's 1 month to a full year or year and a half to 2 years, we expect our on-site or office operations to return to normal. That's that temporary blip number there. Now, so what you see is in April to May of 2020, we had that 68% total transformation, the sum of the red bar and that blue bar right there. Now, for the first study that we presented last September for Fairfax County EDA, that August to September 2020 number, you see that was 74%. So really in the heat of the pandemic, we were at 74% transformation. That third bar, as I mentioned, is the most recent data, April to June 2021, where we actually went down to 59% on that transformation number. I would say that the question wording changed slightly. We went more to a do you agree or disagree that COVID-19 is a transformation? But that change there is very significant, right? 74% transformation dropping to 59% transformation. I would note that this survey was conducted while the Delta strain was just getting into the news. Obviously, the Delta strain really started having some of its impact later in the summer. So keep that in mind. But even with that, it's notable that in Fairfax County, coronavirus transformation in the workplaces was seen as lower. I would note, though, also that the C-suite and owners that we had in our sample were more likely to say or more likely to agree that coronavirus remains a transformative event. It was more of the VPs and directors, and the mid-level managers and associates that have decision-making in real estate where you saw that transformation go down a bit. I'd also point to some of the square footage crosstabs that you see there, as well as the industry crosstabs. So for example, by industry, in technology, that transformation number has been steadily going down. And then for professional services as well, you end up with that 57% transformative today. So it's more technology companies driving the transformation than professional services companies. But you'll see these crosstabs as we go throughout the presentation. So when I think about this data, Fairfax County, that transformation due to COVID, somewhat shifting down, but there's always this role of hybrid workplaces and teleworking that Chair Lang and Stephen both mentioned that's fueling some of that transformation as well. And Andrew, if you could move to the next slide. Excellent. So what you see here is an important question that we asked both last year and then this most recent year in our second phase. What we wanted to understand, and typically in our studies, we asked, are you considering renewing your lease in your current office location, right? That's most important for some of the building owners and managers we've worked with in the past. For Fairfax County, though, we really wanted to gain an understanding of the extent to which they would stay in their current office space versus look for a new office space, albeit still within Fairfax County, versus leaving the county or even shutting down. What we've seen is this number moving in the right direction. So imagine in August to September of 2020, those top two categories there, renewing our lease and staying in this office building, or moving out of our current office property but staying in Fairfax County, those are the would remain in Fairfax County. If you look at it back in August to September, we essentially had 85% saying, yes, we would be remaining in Fairfax County in our next lease. We've since then moved in a positive direction. We now stand at 91% of our enterprises in this sample saying, yes, we would remain in business in Fairfax County. When you look at it, you really see more loyalty or more intention to renew in Fairfax County in Reston, Chantilly, and Fairfax Center. Those three submarkets are really driving a lot of that loyalty, a lot of that intentionality to remain in business in Fairfax County. I'd also note that when you look at our study, we don't necessarily take into account in-migration. So we're talking to current Fairfax County office tenants, right? And not necessarily those who might also be moving in. So that 91% does not include tenants that may be moving in from other counties, from DC and crossing the river, et cetera. Next slide, Andrew. So this is an important question, and we also asked this in our national study. The idea here was to understand, to Chair Lang's comments and Stephen's comments, obviously the hybrid working environments, COVID-19, this is all leading to an increase in teleworking. That's been noted in thought leadership pieces, local business journal articles, et cetera. We wanted to have this data for ourselves, though, for Fairfax County exclusively, and also be able to compare it to the national. What you're looking at right here are four different options. The way we phrased this question was, think about the percentages of your workforce who were full-time in office versus mostly in office versus split in that hybrid model, or even full telework. Each respondent entered in that red bar there, on average, how much of your workforce was in that category, full-time in office versus mostly in office, and so on. The red bar, we asked them to say pre-coronavirus, what percentages fell into each of these categories. The blue bar was when we asked them, project forward 12 to 18 months from now and tell us what percentages would fall into each of those categories 12 to 18 months from now, presumably post-COVID-19. What you see here is a significant shift from that full-time in office number to more of that workforce split, and then even some full telework there, right? So pre-COVID-19, we were showing 75% of workforces for the average company, mostly or full-time in office. And then you see that blue bar drop down to about 58% full-time or mostly in office post-COVID-19, 12 to 18 months from now. What's interesting, and then correspondingly, you see a slight increase in that workforce split between telework and office, in-person office. And then you see that doubling in that full telework number from 12 to 24%. What's interesting about this data, we can compare this to our nationwide survey. Nationwide, that full or mostly in office, so those two top red bars, pre-COVID-19, was at 80% and then goes to 58%. So we actually started as Fairfax County about 5 points lower in that mostly or full-time in office, but we end up in the same place in terms of that 12 to 18-month projection. And I'd add at that bottom, that full or mostly telework, right, that ends up at 26% in our nationwide study. So we are matching the nationwide numbers when it comes to those occupancy changes and the percentage of full-time telework in our enterprises in Fairfax County. On the right, you'll see how this differs by submarket in Fairfax County. So for example, you'll see that in a place like Tyson's, that red bar there, you see about 44% who will be full-time in office or mostly in office versus that 40% teleworking. In some of the other submarkets, that difference is less. For example, in Herndon, there's much more full-time in office projected 12 to 18 months from now than some of those other submarkets. So this is important because obviously that transformation that was noted earlier has led to different perceptions around the role of teleworking and how that will be managed, right? And the onus is going to be on these building owners and managers to essentially create ways for tenants to maintain cultural connections with their employees and and help tenants reassess and understand what space dynamics will be like in this 12 to 18 month world. Next slide, Andrew. One of these changes is obviously going to be square footage per employee. So one question that we asked was whether you're considering reducing your overall square footage or not, recognizing your organization's staffing trends. Following the pandemic, would you be aiming to increase your average square footage per employee, decrease it, or remain about the same? What we show here is that about 39%, so 4 in 10, Fairfax County tenants are actually planning to increase their square footage per employee. And you have another 45% who are unsure. And only 16% say they'll be decreasing their square footage per employee. I'd note that when you look at the overall sample, it's that 39% would increase square footage per employee. Amongst C-suite and owners, so the true decision makers in the sample, they're at 37% planning to increase their square footage per employee. So it's fairly split between that increase and that remain the same, fewer decreases. When you think about the expansion, right, the expansion of square footage per employee, it's really being driven by those mid-level managers and associates and office managers with some space decision-making, as well as those largest square footage tenants in the sample. So imagine if you look at those who are 25,000 to 50,000 square feet, right? They're at 50% increasing square footage per employee, whereas the 2/3 of more than 50,000 square foot tenants are looking or aiming to increase their square footage per employee. So that's a combination of the need to increase social distancing, physical distancing, also the fact that they may be having rotational or hoteling, workplaces within their office spaces. Next slide, Andrew. So this was an important question we asked as well about revenue projections. So essentially, we wanted to ask, trailing on our study last year, where do you see your future state revenue being versus forecast? Essentially, do you see your revenue versus forecast earlier in the year being higher, there being no change, or will it be lower? The red bar is last year's study where we presented that data. The blue bar is Fairfax County only for that April to June 2021 study, our most recent study. So what you see here is that in sum, 55% of those we interviewed said that they'll have higher revenue than they expected by forecast this year, right? That's down from 57%, but within 2 points. So we still have more than half, or at least remained relatively stable at more than half of Fairfax County enterprises in our sample projecting higher revenue relative to forecast. The bigger number two is that 21%. So 21% of enterprises do expect lower net revenue relative to forecast, right? But that was previously 37% in our last study. So that pessimism has gone down. performance has gone up essentially to the point where we now still have that majority saying we will have higher revenue for this year relative to forecast. You can also look at some of those projections on the right. So for example, Tyson's previously in 2020 said 33% higher revenue relative to forecast, now at 58% in our most recent study. So you can see areas where that optimism, that higher performance relative to forecast actually increased. For example, amongst 10,000 to 25,000 square foot tenants, amongst those tenants greater than 50,000 square feet. Next slide. Part of this conversation is also about hiring trends. And what we found in our study was that on the left, you can see this question, is your organization currently hiring? And if so, for how many positions? On the right, you see we asked them to project their next 18-month hiring pace and whether that they'll be increasing the pace of hires, remaining the same, or decreasing the pace of hires. So back to the left, what you'll see there is that yes number, that's 72% who say they're currently hiring, right? Of those, under 10 positions at 45%, 10 to 20 positions at 15%, and 20 or more positions at 12%. And only 28% are saying, no, we aren't currently hiring. Now, in the middle there, we asked this question, what essentially is driving more hiring, right? Or what could drive more hiring if it were to be true? So first off, the number one motivator of more hiring, and this is fairly intuitive, but we like when the data is fairly intuitive as well, is this idea of increased client and customer demand for my organization's products and services. But number two was interesting to us as well, safe, productive returns to in-person workplaces. What we're finding in our national research and in the Fairfax County research is that really being distant, being remote, more teleworking has created some challenges when it comes to maintaining good corporate cultures. A message that we tested in Fairfax County and nationally relates to in-person office space, essentially driving culture, communications, and collaboration, what we call the 3 C's, and even coaching, mentoring, et cetera, right? So Fairfax County tenants are really seeing a key to their plans to hire more employees as that safe, productive return to in-person workplaces, which is something we've been emphasizing to our owners, building owners and managers and developers that we work with as well. And then number three, I think is important, is this desire to hire new and the best talent before they're scooped up by competitors. So there is a sense of urgency here where we do have Fairfax County employers really wanting to get back to their in-person offices, be able to onboard folks in their offices versus backyards, for example, which we've heard from some interviews, and get that best talent, right? So those safe returns to workplaces are absolutely essential here. And what you'll see on the right about hiring pace, 54% actually say, assuming the COVID-19 pandemic is largely managed, throughout the summer, would your organization be increasing the pace of new hires, remaining about the same in the pace of new hires, or decreasing? That's where you saw only 12% saying they would be decreasing their next 18-month hiring pace. Now, again, this was pre-Delta, but based on the internal data that we've been examining, a lot of this is just found with 55% of our employers saying that they expect more revenue relative to forecast, right? The number one driver being that increased client and customer demand. We see that hiring pace number being fairly solid and having a bit of a long tail. So again, 54% saying that they would increase the pace of hires as of June. And I'd like to quickly just turn to my colleague, Jamie Moore, just to talk about some of the hiring, projected hiring pace, revenue numbers, et cetera.
Yeah, I think, one thing to keep in mind when looking at a survey like this is if you step back, it tells a story. And if you think about some of the previous slides relative to the sharp increase that we'll be seeing in telework, as well as just the overall economic exuberance that folks are showing, and then their plans relative to space changes, and then, of course, this on the hiring side. If you think about the balancing act, oftentimes in real estate and also in just HR and financial projections for a company, space and hiring were often linked together. That trend had started to decrease over the last decade, especially since the last Great Recession. But COVID, as we know, has been an accelerant. So we have seen a very dramatic decoupling that's been proven, I think, also in the marketplace, the performance of what we're actually seeing, and then also in the data that seems to reinforce what people are projecting. So again, the economic, positivity that you saw on the previous slide, translating to more hiring, but yet the expectation that there will be more telework and potentially either reductions in space or redesign of space that will accommodate more of the telework and the hybrid. So I think that's important to keep in mind, that there is this shift very much going on in the marketplace where those two factors are decoupling.
Excellent. Thank you for the commentary, Jamie. And we can move on to the next and final slide. So as we discussed, a lot of this is all about, we ask questions around what investments would employers, would commercial office tenants like to see made. This question that you see on the left is an interesting one, where we ask these tenants in our sample, these employers in our sample, to essentially think about their next hypothetical office search. And if they had a total budget to spend on different elements of their office location or environment, how would they allocate those? Right? We call it the hypothetical $100 question. And you'll see that those are all closed-ended, where we give them those options. They then allocate their budget across those. The red bar are all Fairfax County employers in our sample, that all audiences. The blue bar is just C-suite and owners of those enterprises. So the true economic decision makers, those who can say yes when others say no on an office location, and say no when others say yes. What you'll see here, right? We have $14 of budget for properties with strong cybersecurity and connectivity, enabling safe and fast remote working connections. The next one there, essentially statistically tied, is $13 for properties with additional infrastructure to safeguard against harmful pathogens, right? So that's HVAC, touchless features. This is all about preventing disruptions to operations for future pathogens, not necessarily for dealing with COVID in the here and now. What I did want to share, though, is when you ask this question nationally, right, and we ask commercial office tenants and employers nationwide, where would you divvy up your hypothetical $100? This was that $34 of investment in the additional infrastructure to safeguard against harmful pathogens, right? So whereas Fairfax County is at $13, the nationwide sample was at $34, more than a third of their budget towards that. So in some ways, we believe that it shows that Fairfax County office tenants, the employers, are more focused on some of these novel efforts and initiatives to really to bring employees back to the office spaces. They're looking more to grow their productivity and grow their performance and ultimately grow their revenue, right? With those strong cybersecurity and connectivity elements. More co-working and flex workspaces throughout the building to make employees comfortable coming back and more productive. High-end building amenities that you see there at $12. And one thing that I thought was notable was that property with high-end neighborhood amenities, retail, restaurants, and cultural that attract talent. Notice for all audiences in the survey, it was at $11 of investment, but for the C-suite and owners, it jumps up by about $5, right? So you're seeing this desire for these C-suite and owners at these companies to have some of those neighborhood amenities open up so that they can attract talent, whether it's current talent or prospective talent, to their offices. You'll see on the right there, we broke down the top 5 of those budget allocations by square footage. And one thing that's interesting is when we look again at that high-end neighborhood amenities, so retail, restaurants, and cultural that attract talent, it's the 5th one down. You do see, for example, the 5,000 to 10,000 square foot tenant. So that small to mid-sized enterprise, doubling up essentially on their budget for that, along with the high-end building amenities. So they're definitely recognizing that there's something unique about the place and the space that they're emphasizing for owners and managers to really bring back and to help them bring back their employees. So that's our final slide. I'm happy to answer any questions that commission members, staff, and others bring up, and pass this back to Stephen.
Kevin, I definitely have a couple questions. Can you go back to the early slide? And you say this is 101 Fairfax companies or 101 nationwide? What's the size of the nationwide study, and how many did you actually interview in Fairfax?
So this is its own bespoke study, pulse poll for Fairfax County with 101 Fairfax County decision makers and influencers. We also conducted, as this was in the field, a separate study that encompassed about 3,000 or so nationwide commercial office tenants. And then some of the, obviously we trendlined and had some of the questions the same for both audiences. So we could compare how is our Fairfax County sample responding relative to the nationwide. And that's where you saw some of those differences. Like the transformation number was 62%, right? Nationwide, we were at 59%. You saw the comparisons we're able to do in that office occupancy, the full telework versus, full-time in office, et cetera, James.
Yeah. So a couple of quick things. So I'm part of a group. It's called Mindshare. It's probably the largest gathering in the DC metro area of any that's been in technology. It's a giant group now. And I happened to meet with a group of the faster growing companies from there about 2 weeks ago. So about 15 to 20 companies. I also sit on an advisory group of one private equity group that invests in now hundreds of companies, and an entrepreneur in residence in another venture capital group. But this impromptu meeting that we had, the 15 to 20 CEOs, I would say a couple things sort of came out from that conversation, and I'll surmise it by saying, hey, if we want to run a larger test, I can have access to that community. It's probably brings it up to 1,000 companies locally. It's everyone from Reggie Agrawal on the CVent side to our startup community. But I heard a really different set of conversations, and I'm wondering how much of this is sparked by Delta. Obviously, Apple and pretty much every major tech company now has delayed the return until January, right? That's pretty much across the board. And this general feeling of the great resignation that everyone's talking about, which is this massive level of turnover that's happening within technology. And I am talking mostly technology. I guess it would touch some elements of pro services if it was within the technology space. But since this area is very focused on technology and technology jobs, I'm just talking about that. There is a weird conundrum and a disconnect that's being sort of identified by some of these leaders that's just becoming known now, which is, hey, suddenly with a lot of turnover, I'm having to provide a lot of differentiation for people to join my company. And one of those is, hey, now you've worked from home for 2 years, I'm not going to force you to come back. I think it's certainly these numbers are starting to show that. I think the longer it goes, I literally had a conversation with 2 CEOs today, and they copied the exact same words. So everybody's talking about it going, I can't force people to come back. Like it's just done. So I have to offer hybrid in the future. As I started looking at some of your numbers about, hey, it made it almost look like, wow, we're going to actually increase the amount of property. I'd go back to that unsure. I would absolutely confirm the economy for technology is extremely strong, and I think hiring is going up. My own company, we're hiring through the roof. The problem is we're not hiring here now. Suddenly, that's the first time ever. We've always hired in Fairfax. And by the way, every single one of the companies I talked to had an element of that's coming back. One, hey, I'm definitely have to go hybrid. Matter of fact, every single company, unless they had a security standard associated with it, which certainly our region will help, every single one, now it's maybe now 30 or 40 companies I've talked to in the last 2 weeks, every single one said I have to go hybrid. And Delta changed that for a lot of them. And then you add to that the sudden increase of workforce that, and if I don't have to stay in Fairfax, kids are, the talent's starting to move. It's the longest winded soliloquy to say, if I saw this presentation without seeing what's happening with Delta and maybe without a larger base, I would think, man, it's going to be great. It's going to come back. We're going to take more property than ever before. And I'm not hearing that especially again, these conversations with 40 or 50 companies in the last 2 weeks, that there's a lot of uncertainty. I think some of it will be padded by the fact that, hey, I'm suddenly growing a lot faster. So and that's where I look at your 44% of people saying, I'm unsure of what I'm going to do with property. Those companies should have been growing though. That's the interesting thing. I talked to a company today, one of the fastest growing companies in our area, Case Point, big legal technology company. They would, if they didn't have to go through some of what's happening now, this hybrid and hiring out of region, they would have doubled their office space. And they might have doubled it every year for the next 2 years. And this is a company with a lot of revenue. And instead, they're going to take the same amount of space, and they're one of the successful companies. So I'm curious, I'm wondering, is it Delta that's changing my perception that doesn't seem to link up with what I'm hearing? Is it a larger sample size? Is it that you had 100 companies and you had to divide them by the 5 or 6 different industries here, and therefore maybe some of these other industries are going to do much better, and technology is a little weird anomaly. Anyway, I thought I'd deliver that up as a question mark for me as I look at this. And as well, I'm happy to, and I told this to Victor too, I'm happy to open up the Mindshare network. I'm on the insider group there to maybe trying to do a much larger sample size here to see if there's something else going on, and maybe post Delta as well. So I'll pause there for comments, and I apologize for the lengthiness of this response.
Oh, well, thank you for that, James. Actually, as I'm listening to you, I think, one, we're condensing a lot of data and presenting it sort of in top line form. So everything I heard you say really does sort of track. If you look at, the point I made about, there is a decoupling of office space decisions, whether they're unsure or whether they're going to change the mix. The reality is somewhat of that, if you look at the preceding slide about the optimism about hiring. So that seems to track with what you're talking about, but more specifically in the technology sector, there's a lot more optimism as far as the economic growth, as well as the hiring practices. Some of what you're seeing in the overall study is a drag on old line firms that are somewhat more wedded to their office space and having people come in to work. So we're talking about law firms, banks, accounting firms, et cetera, that have been slower to adopt to the hybrid model. But they're picking up the pace because obviously it's a competitive threat for them as far as hiring and losing people, et cetera. But I think, and I believe we're going to be sharing this deck, but I think when you look at technology, you'll see that the numbers tend to go slightly more in line with what you're talking about. But you're seeing overall numbers that are being dragged down by, other industries. But certainly, we'll work through Stephen and Alex, but I think there would be a willingness to take you up on your offer on Mindshare. That sounds really interesting, and I know it would be insightful for many.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm certainly able to do that. Thanks for coming back.
What other questions or comments are there? I guess one thing that was interesting to me was the place and space that CEOs are really grabbing onto. Seems like I don't know whether it's been driven by what that's been driven by, where there's that, is it new awareness that placemaking is really important in terms of space? So do you have any comments on that, Kevin?
Yeah, I do think that, as we showed and as James commented, there's this idea that we are increasing revenue, we are bringing on new projects, we do need to increase hiring, and to compete for that, we want to offer exceptional workplaces with those good amenities. I believe that part of it also is that a lot of these C-suite owners who have these office spaces in Class A buildings, Class A locations, are also looking to recoup their full investment, from their area amenities, their neighborhood amenities that are shown in pre-COVID times, and even today, as you saw in the survey, to draw in some of that best talent and make these places that people want to work. I think that that's part of it. We've conducted interviews with dozens of commercial office decision makers, including folks who are VPs and SVPs of real estate at Fortune 500 companies, who, essentially said we don't get that same level of collaboration, coaching, communications by onboarding folks in our backyards. We want to be back to our offices. So I think that response is, like you said, Chair Lang, very acute at that C-suite and owner level. And, really, we've been working with, owners and operators of commercial office space across the country on how to really communicate and educate and make those C-suite and ownership groups aware of the best strategies, of how to facilitate the safest and most productive return to your workplace, right? What sort of messaging is involved there? And those are all elements we also had in this survey as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Vitalich, did you have something you want to ask?
Yeah, just a couple of questions and maybe different ways to slice the data would be helpful. I mean, for those in the earlier slide that said those that wish to stay in the county but decrease office space, I think it was slide 3 in your presentation. Be interesting to know whether or not that they where they would want to go, or they're moving into the county, or they were decreasing their office space, and seeing where they're kind of making those decisions. And accordingly, like to James's point, for those larger corporations that may be continuing the hiring trends, are those hiring folks in the Northern Virginia region? Or because they have offices across the country, are they looking at places where they could relocate? For example, I know a lot of major corporations, my corporation, we have folks that since the beginning of the pandemic have moved to warmer climates, have moved closer to family, moved away from urban centers. Their anticipation is that eventually, when we get through this, we'll all come back and be where we were. There's a benefit there for tax reporting purposes and the like, but I think that's still to be told whether or not we would be forcing folks back and how long it will take to get folks back. And so I'm wondering to know if you can splice those data in different data points to figure out where the hiring will be going. Will they be coming to Fairfax County in Northern Virginia, or will they just be hiring more in a general sense? Which I tend to think that they will. I just don't know if they'll be here, if that makes sense.
Sure, Joe, that's a great point, and we can certainly go in and slice the data and look at when we have that response in terms of which firms are hiring, what is the profile of those firms? Are they, based, what percentage are based nationally, may just be hiring generally, as you said, which are smaller mid-sized local enterprises where that hiring, increasing the pace of hires, would directly benefit Fairfax County. I think that's a great comment. On your first comment, on this slide 3, this doesn't relate to office space reduction per se. This is all just about their physical location. So the difference is, we have the blue bar again is the most recent study, 55% who would renew our lease and stay in this office building, 35% who would move out of the current office property, but stay in Fairfax County. So it's not necessarily tied to shrinking the space, although I would say that when you speak to these folks who are moving out of their office building, right, in general and nationwide, they are also attempting to right size as well. So that's kind of a good inference that you made from the data there.
And one
So
thing
Kevin,
I jump in on, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. So like on this slide here, so that moving out of current office space but staying in Fairfax County, are you able to see for those 35% in the April-June period, what their answer was to their square footage needs? Are you able to kind of correlate the two between the 35% that said, I'm going to stay in Fairfax County, but I'm going to move out of the office that I currently exist, and whether or not they're right sizing? Are you able to look at that data?
Yep, we are able to slice the data like that and figure that out for those different audiences. And Jamie, did you have something to add?
Well, I was just going to say one thing that because we have a number of real estate clients on the office side, one thing we're seeing too is that clients or tenants are making shifts if they're up for renewal in the next, short term here, next couple of years. B is moving up to A, and A might be looking for, even better amenities or trophy space, et cetera, because again, it's all tied to that recruitment wow factor and some of this factor of how can we get employees, even hybrid ones, to come in and really maximize the points that Kevin made earlier, the coaching, collaboration, communication, mentoring, et cetera, rethinking space, but perhaps in some cases shrinking a little bit to get, a higher rent, but nicer building with whether it's location or just the amenities and programming that add to the appeal for employees as a recruiting and retention tool.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The idea that we know now we don't have to be in an office. I mean, that's clear. And I work in an industry where there's probably people from 4 locations in almost any meeting I have. So I may have a nucleus of people in the office with me, but then I got a bunch of satellite connections. The idea that the office space needs to provide more than just that place where everybody collaborates. I think having those amenities, and it's not so much the amenities in the building, it's having a restaurant or, something, or being close to where other people want to be close to, like a customer. So I see that being the driving factor.
It's just a clarification question. How do you think we should look at the correlation of data about square footage trends coupled with growth in the view of full-time people moving away from being in the office? So it's clear that folks think that, there'll be this either partial or significant increase in folks permanently not being in the office every day, coupled with square footage trending that indicates the trend is going to potentially grow. How should we think about that correlation of data?
Very carefully. But I know that, between Stephen and Alex and Victor, they have thought long and hard about this. And we've had some, previous conversations as we were presenting early slices of the data. So I don't know if one of you guys wants to jump in on this, because I think you would have a better sense of what that really means with forecasting or just overall how you're starting to look at it as you plan forward.
Sure, I'll start.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry,
go ahead, Stephen.
After you.
Well, yeah, to Jamie's point and to Lenny's question, it is a multi-dimensional type of thought process. And I think Kevin and Jamie, your slide 5 shows that they're actually thinking of increasing the square footage per employee that would actually be in the office. But the flip side of that is that they actually have fewer people in the office and may need less space overall. So they're planning to have more square feet for the people who are actually there, but they may not be increasing their overall footprint. So that's one thing that really stood out to me. And then the other thing is, just in the headlines or with some of the intel that we're getting from the BI team about announcements, there is this differentiation between the brand names and the really big tenants and ones that are thinking in those 10 and 15-year lease increments, and then ones that really had to hit the pause button over the past 18 months. And that's why I think we're seeing these increases in tour activity, because there was so much uncertainty and it was really so hard to predict even for your own organization what was going to happen, that now, to Joe's point, maybe they're going back to the drawing board and doing some of that right sizing. Stephen?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that. And part of that is the communication that our business investment team has with these companies on a company by company basis too. We put it into perspective where it's not just office versus a different type of property user. It's not even by industry. We're seeing it vary by team and person by person, individual, on how they feel about coming back into the office. So making sure that these companies get ahead of that and they're clear with their communication and each of their managers and their managers with their teams on what that's going to look like so they can have a better idea of what that space is. So I just think going forward, constant communication will be huge. And that's where I think we play a large part, especially our business investment staff that does such a good job of keeping up with these companies.
I think part of our challenge is going to figure out what this means to the EDA and what it is that we're going to be targeting for what we will put forward to our funders, to the Board of Supervisors and to the county in terms of what we think makes sense. So we have a challenge ahead of us.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add to that. I think Victor said it right. I had a conversation with Victor and staff last week, and Victor made a really good point, or the team made a good point, that this is complicated at its calculus. This is not, I wish this was just algebra. This is, there's compounding complexities to this, like, hey, cost of living's high and more virtual. Will companies open up the ability for people to leave? Because it opens up more talent and a talent draining pool. There's way more jobs in some of these industries than there are people today. And it's getting worse. So do you have to open it up? And what does that mean? You know, does that compound some of these problems, even if they want people back in an office? It combined with everything else we're working on to develop workforce, I think that's still going to be probably still the strategy. We have to develop the workforce, and we got to convince people to want to be here too, because we all believe, I believe, that you lose tribal ability for a company to grow as effectively and efficiently if you just do it virtually. I just think it's really, really, really hard to do that. And most companies do not have the talent to pull that off effectively. So we want to help these companies continue to grow and stay competitive. You know, they're going to have to somewhat come back to an office at some point. And we want more workers to be here to support that. It's complicated. I don't begrudge the hard work that our EDA is going to have to go through to figure this out over the next couple of years.
Yeah, the last thing I would add is just that it's part of a larger story arc, you know, dating back 15 years or even 20 years to when, you know, you needed 250 square feet per person in an office. And then we saw that number go under 200. And then that number got closer to 150 or even 140. And then it went too far because there were too many employees working too closely together, and it recovered and went back up into the 170s. And now this is the next chapter of that story, where all of a sudden there is more uncertainty introduced, but still a need to produce the high performing office space to make your company as productive and efficient as it can be, and build the culture like you're talking about, James. So I agreed, and we're certainly monitoring that along with the many brokerages here in the region.
You just went on mute, Kathy. Kathy, you just
went
on mute.
I got it. I'm sorry. I just, yeah. Okay. So I think I want to thank Kevin and Jamie, and we'll continue to work with you and see how we can really understand this and use it as we move forward with our strategy. So thank you very much. And with that, I would like to ask for, I would like to give my report, which is very brief tonight. As we mentioned, October, we'll have a closed session so that we can talk about the Bright Line study and survey and think about how we're going to set up our metrics for the year. I did send to the commissioners 2 documents today, one outlining the one-on-one meetings with the Board of Supervisors, which we're starting to plan. And if you have any questions or any changes you'd like to make, obviously let me know. And then lastly, we have set out a list of targeted speakers, many of whom are confirmed for this upcoming year. So that's for your information. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Victor.
Thank you, Chair Lang. Tomorrow, I have an opportunity to open up our Entrepreneurship 101. Entrepreneurship 101 is bread and butter of our organization. Karen Small, our Director of Diverse and Minority Businesses, has just done a fantastic job with growing this program. We've served over 5,000 companies through this program. They range from small tech companies to restaurants. What we've been doing lately to add a new flavor to our work, we've actually been inviting entrepreneurs to inspire those who are listening for the information. So the first part of the program is all about information sharing, providing information on things like the $25 million pivot program that the Department of Economic Initiatives and the county supervisors are bringing to the community. We're also going to talk about the expansion of the EIDL loan program, growing from roughly, I think, 200,000 up to like 1 million now. So we provide them with resource information, but we also want them to be inspired. And this couple here, Scott and Cindy Hoffman, they are an inspiration. And for those of you who like beer, they also make a nice brew. Next slide, please. So I've been serving on the Blueprint Virginia 2030 committee as part of the Virginia State Chamber. It's a great opportunity for us to impact where we're going in the future. Northern Virginia has a special position in the state of Virginia, so we're able to bring a voice to that from the economic development community, but also many of our companies, many of our technology companies participate in this event. This particular session is going to be focused on veterans and military affairs, and Senator Kane is going to be speaking. I think it's going to be an exciting program, and we really view our veterans as a huge resource for us. And this is an opportunity for us to let them know that we're thinking of them, but also to figure out how to pull them in and get them into this, directly into our labor force, as James was talking about, so they will stay here, being friendly to not just veterans, but to their spouses, figuring out how to connect them to jobs. And that's a really big part of what we are doing. Next slide, please. This is a wonderful opportunity to really honor a person. They say, you should give honor where honor is due. And certainly in this case, it is. Jerome Davis, EVP of Revenue, is retiring from MWA. He has been a tremendous partner, not only to business, but also to the economic development community. I will have the opportunity to say a few words honoring him. I have to say, I'm going to miss him. I worked with him when I was in Arlington County. He's a visionary. Part of that bridge idea from Crystal City to the airport to Reagan was part of his idea. I have to say that that's the kind of innovation that we need from our leaders. He's going to be sorely missed. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Batt to talk a little bit about talent. Mike.
Thank you, Victor and commissioners. This is a hot topic tonight based on what we just have been talking through. And I'll tell you just some of the stats we've seen. We can go to the next slide. I just have one slide to share, but just in the last month and reporting through our Chimera Jobs EQ, we've seen a 3%, almost 3% jump in job openings here in Fairfax County, 60-something thousand. So the jobs are continuing to grow. But I think, as we were talking about, they're at risk because a lot of these companies have expanded their office, especially in the tech world, locations around the country. So we do have a challenge, but I think we're working on a number of things to really address that. Victor just touched on one around the veterans, and I'll walk through this list quickly. First of all, college and university career fairs, laser focused on that. We had a great one in person. You can see here on a 95-degree day a couple of weeks ago where there were 770 students that came through, and really, we just sold them on the value of staying here, building a career here, launching your career here. We did one virtually with Cornell University, and this week alone, we're going to do 8 more out of 16 this month. And it's across the country with universities like NYU, University of Southern Cal, Virginia State, and many others. So really reaching out there to try to bring talent here to launch their career here. And then on the veteran side, as Victor was touching on, our November 4th career fair is really coming together nicely. We have 31 companies that have over 6,000 jobs open right now that are going to be participating. So we're excited to continue to build the momentum with the veterans and military families, the spouses event on November 4th. And to that point, I think we've touched on it, but there's 200,000 that transition out every year. So part of our outreach for that military career fair is not only working with Fort Belvoir and all of their military that are transitioning out, but we're reaching out through our new growing team with our veteran focus with Rod, is to reach out to transition assistant program offices across the country. So we're reaching out to military installations around the country to drive them here to continue to transition their careers. And then we have the 2 tech cyber career fairs coming up. We're doing a lot more, but that's then these career fairs, like, you know, alternatives, working with Nova, Opportunity at Work, an organization that focuses on something called STARS. There's 70 million people out there that have come, you know, that have certifications and other means besides that 4-year college degree. So we're really working hard to try to educate our companies on looking at alternative options to hire. And for example, ICF here in Fairfax County, the global consulting company, but they have $8.6 million from the Department of Labor right now for apprenticeship programs. And we're trying to keep it here in the county because they're going to expand that program around the country. So we're trying to get our companies to sign up and take advantage of that free money that they can help pay payroll for apprentices as they bring them on board. So we're doing a lot to focus on this growing challenge, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some of that. So back to you, Victor.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. And we're going to hear a little bit from our man, Alan Fogg, regarding communications. Alan?
Thank you very much, Victor. Good evening, commissioners and others on the call. You know, I've told you a lot of stories in the last several months about our media outreach efforts that we coordinate with our PR firm, DCI, and the great results that we got in fiscal 21. Tonight, I want to tell you a bit about the considerable reach of our digital outreach efforts and a great success story too. Next slide, Andrew. So thanks to Andrew and our digital communications manager, Serena Williams, our communications manager, Sharon Reed, and our partners at DCI, we are active on all the major social platforms. We have strategies for all of them in terms of what we post on each and how regularly we post. So we focused our LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube strategies around business investment with the goal to communicate directly with corporate decision makers. We focus our Facebook strategy around giving the local community information about our activities. And we have recently turned our Instagram account into a Work in Northern Virginia account to communicate directly with the talent that we want to attract and retain in Northern Virginia and help Mike fill those jobs. In addition, we've just added a Work in Northern Virginia LinkedIn page to do the same thing. So you get a good idea of our reach when you combine followers of our social channels, that's 17,000 and climbing, with the 14,000 plus who receive the eBird twice a week. Now, as they say on TV, but wait, there's more. When you add in all the connections, social connections that our staff and our reps across the globe have, you can add in another 19,000. And that gets to our collective possible digital reach of more than 50,000 people. So, and I have to say kudos to Dev in our India office, who has the most connections of anyone in our network. So one other thing that Victor pointed out to me today, that when you add hits to the FCEDA website and to the talent site, and that is more than 120,000 hits a year on our EDA site and 400,000 hits to the talent site, you get a real good idea of how many people we are reaching digitally. We are well on our way to our ultimate goal of being viewed as our own news channel. Next slide, please. So around social media, digital media, I thought you'd like a quick case study of a real success story from the past month. Our communications manager, Sharon Reed, posts a lot of content on LinkedIn. she established a dialogue on LinkedIn with James Skank, the CEO of PenFed Credit Union, one of our most prominent employers in Tysons. He agreed to an interview. So Sharon and Andrew visited the company in person last month and worked up a great Q&A and video that focused on how the company decided to relocate its headquarters to Tysons, how it is innovating, and what the PenFed Foundation is doing for veterans. This was a really great story. And like I said, we had a newsletter version, so in black and white, so to speak, and a great little video that Andrew put together. So we pushed that out on the eBird, and we got really good engagement for that one, more than 3,000 unique opens. We pushed the package out on our social channels and got nearly 3,000 impressions just on LinkedIn. Then PenFed liked the package enough that it posted it and got 3,100 views on its LinkedIn page. And then the CEO, James Skank, posted it and got more than 3,400 views on his LinkedIn page. So to recap here, we highlighted another great company in Fairfax County. We spotlighted its reasons for choosing Fairfax County for its headquarters. We got great amplification from our staff, the company, and the community. And we strengthened our relationship with a major employer. And I call that a win-win-win-win situation. Next slide, please. Finally, I thought you would like to see a couple of James Skank's quotes about why he and PenFed chose Fairfax County for its headquarters. He really focused on choosing a location that has high quality amenities that help them attract and retain talent. And that's a point that we just heard come up in the Brightline research. Moreover, he likes being around other corporate headquarters. So that's it for tonight's marketing communications report. And I would just ask everybody on this call to follow our social accounts so that we can keep building that reach and become that news channel. So thank you very much. And Victor, back to you.
I appreciate that, Alan. Thank you so much for that. Exciting opportunities that are coming forward using the leverage of our own people and also using these technology mediums that we absolutely rely on these days. And with that, I will turn it over to Chair Lang.
Thank you. And I am unmuted, so that's a success. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We really have a lot to think about. We have a lot to learn from the survey tonight and really figure out how we're going to apply that to our strategy moving forward. We're going to move into a closed session. And Victor, when we come back to the open session, I'm going to text you and let you know we're ready to invite you back in, okay? So with that, I would like for the commissioners to stay on. I'm going to ask for their motion to convene a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A1 to discuss the performance of specific employees of the EDA. So I need a motion. So I'd like the motion to be approved. Do I have an approval of the motion?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Yep.
Second.
Okay, great. And is there any discussion? Very good. And then council, I will ask you to call the question and do the roll call.
Very good. Thank you, Kathy. Mr. Quigley.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Partridge.
Aye.
Ms. Hainsworth.
Aye.
Mr. Wagner.
Aye.
Mr. Vigilich.
Aye.
We're able to move into closed session.
Okay, very good. And we are going to stop the recording at this point. And
Record again now that we're
okay, good. Recording in progress. Victor should be coming on. So in the meantime, what we need is a motion that that verifies that we, in closed session pursuant to the Virginia Code, we discuss the performance of specific employees of the FCEDA only. Do I hear a motion to support that?
So move, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Lenny. Any further discussion? Okay.
Call for the question.
Call to question. Mike, would you do the roll call, please?
Yes, this is to certify the closed session.
Yes.
Vice Chair Quigley,
Aye.
Secretary Johnson,
Aye.
Treasurer Partridge,
He's on mute.
Aye, sorry.
thanks, Steve. Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Ms. Hainsworth,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Vigilich,
Aye.
And Ms. Lang, yay.
and Ms. Lang.
That's fine. Did Victor make it back on?
Yes, I'm back
Okay.
on.
Okay, good. Thank you, Victor. So very good. So, Victor, this is about you. So when we thought about recruiting a new CEO for the FCEDA, we were seeking a leader who was collaborative, innovative, bold, and had the ability to execute. And as we think about this last year and now 2 years, you have exhibited superior performance in all of those areas, with an addition of being a resilient leader, able to adapt, to pivot, to stay positive, and your team is just rocking. I mean, your accomplishments have been many. You have reinvigorated, re-energized a great team to even greater heights. And by your admission, and it was something I asked you, you feel like your greatest accomplishment was in the talent initiative. And if we think about it, it's extraordinarily innovative. It's an award-winning program. It was an idea. It was some money. If there was some research, that was what you took and your team took to create this fantastic program in which, and you're executing on it, and it will be even greater, where the value has been brought to 175 companies, 100 universities, 40 HBCUs, obviously many of which are not in our county, in our region, training programs, Nova EDA partnerships, veterans transition. I mean, it's been amazing. And I think the other thing that's happened is the business investment group, the communications team, the operations team, everybody works together and has worked together in a way that they've never worked together before. And so it's really heightened the results. You have fostered collaboration 3 weeks in, the Nova Economic Development Regional Alliance, the DMV initiative with the county, and so many others. So you're known for your collaboration. And of course, what can I say about marketing communications? You selected a great company to work with, a great partner. And there are many, many statistics that you shared with us. But look at this one. You earned media 52.4 million, a return on investment of 52 to 1. That doesn't even count all the seminars and the speeches and all the other things that have been, and the website and all the hits and everything that's been going on. So finally, as one board member said, you are a strategic asset to our county and to our region. And we want to thank you. So I want to let you know that the board has unanimously agreed to a salary increase to bring you to $385,000 plus a deferred compensation to maximum allowable in 2021 to $26,000.
Wow. I'm humbled. I really am. I really do appreciate that. It's been amazing. And you've been a great board. Every one of you has just done a spectacular value add to the team. And whenever we need a door open or need to talk to someone, you help us do that. You encourage us and you push us along. I remember the first time the historically Black colleges were brought up. And I said to myself, well, I know two, Morgan State and Howard University, because I worked with them before, but I don't know anybody at the others. And the team got together and they just, they really have just outdone themselves. I'm so proud of everybody. And I'm delighted to work, for you and to serve the county. So thank you. And I appreciate that. I really am humble. Thank you.
So I just, two things. I want to give the board, if they want to just say anything else to you, and then we have to vote on this in open session, just so you know, it's part of our rigmarole that we have to, what we have to do. So it's probably not a nice way to say it, but we have to do that. So I love working with you. You're a fantastic leader, and thank you. So.
Yeah, I was gonna, you're not gonna find anyone who has any other opinion on this too. This is probably the easiest thing we've ever agreed to. This board, we like to grind and grit a little bit. Like it's good, it creates the energy, and this was one of the easiest conversations we've had as a board. You are this area's transformational leader, man. You've done a great work in a challenging time, and done it with a smile on your face, which has been important because that has bled through the organization. And I tell you, Ron's been here a long time, longer than some of us, and certainly Kathy has too, but I've not seen, this team is, when you came on board, you re-energized the team, some of which had been kind of run down a little, they needed that. And you took them in a challenging time, which it would have been hard to do that normally, and you in a more challenging time, and you achieved that goal. I'm just blown away how well you've, and that this was such a great decision, you as leader here. This has just ratified it over and over again for me, and I know for this team. So well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Who
James.
else? Thank you, James. Anybody else?
Sure. I guess I would offer those messages that were already stated. I support them. When we make a decision about leadership selection, and somebody mentioned it earlier, it is the biggest decision for any board to take. And so I would just offer that we are pleased with that outcome. It could have gone many ways, but we were very much motivated by what you could do for the team without even knowing what you would need to do in the presence of the environment we all are in. So it's great the way you make the board look like we had, perfect insight, but thank you. And then, just your personal commitment to the team is felt by us and them. They know it. And so thank you for that leadership as well. And then the fabulous outcomes, not just the ones we are experiencing now, all the ones we anticipate seeing from the team as we go.
Don't feel any pressure.
Just saying.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Steve or Joe, any final words? Ron? We can't see.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to ditto what James and Lenny said. I think that would be suffice just to say that. I ditto what they've said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Joe? Or...
just you viewing it from the outside, Victor, for the longest of time and being familiar with the EDA for about 10 years now, I don't think of any other person that could lead us through these next challenging headwinds with the pandemic, through both the workforce needs, the commercial real estate needs, and how we define this region going forward. So this, as a newbie here, this was an easy layup for me. So I appreciate Chair Lang setting it up for there.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
And Victor, I have to say, I've worked with economic developers for 25 years and talked workforce when you're always talking across each other. And they always said, yeah, it's important. And I always got them saying it, but never did anything about it. And so I truly appreciate you learning about it and really being passionate about it, because you've done what no one else has ever done, is got the economic development community to care about workforce.
Amen.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Workforce and region
region.
No one's done that before in this area.
Yep.
This area was at odds with each other, or at least Fairfax was a bubble of kind of, it's us and maybe some other people who are working together. And funny enough, those people who work together were working with Arlington before. I wonder what the commonality there is, but yeah.
So Rocky, would you like to add something?
Great work, Victor. I think great leadership goes down, across, and up. And I would like to comment on great leadership going up because I think you have positively impacted this board and have elevated our thinking and our actions to do what boards are supposed to do and keep our fingers out of operations. That has not always been the case. And I think that's very healthy all around. So kudos to you and to your team. And we still have a long way to go, but man, you've knocked it out the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocky. Thank you.
Yeah, Victor, I'll add, you're a transformational leader in a time that requires great transformation, and I'm just really happy to have you.
Thank you, Rick.
So with that, I want to put a motion forward to increase the salary of the president and CEO of the EDA to $385,000 and to approve deferred compensation to the maximum allowable for 2021. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lenny. Do I hear any discussion? Need any discussion? Okay, great. So I ask that the council do the roll call. Please, Mike, take it away.
Very good. Vice Chair Quigley,
Aye.
Secretary Johnson,
Aye.
Treasurer Partridge,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Ms. Hainsworth,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Vigilich,
Aye.
and Chair Lang.
Aye. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, so I think we will adjourn for the evening. Can we adjourn by consent, council?
Certainly.
Okay, very good. All right, I want to thank everybody, and I look forward to continued success with our transformational leader. So good night, everyone, and take care.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.